What if the secret to success isn't perfect grades, but strategic networking and unexpected skill applications? Drew Schultz's remarkable rise to clinic owner demonstrates how psychometrics training can become your leadership superpower. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. In our special alumni spotlights, we chat to graduates from our psychology degree programs about how their skills learned in the classroom have become powerful tools supporting diverse career journeys and successes. Hi everyone, and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this alumni spotlight, Dr. Amanda Krause speaks with Drew Schultz, a 2014 JCU graduate who launched his own psychology clinic. Drew reveals how those boring psychometric classes strengthened his skills for leadership roles and why research skills proved invaluable even though he never wanted to be a researcher. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about leveraging your transferable skills beyond traditional clinical pathways. Enjoy.
Drew, thank you so much for joining me in person for the podcast today. To get started, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Drew. I graduated here at JCU in 2014. Bachelor of Psychology was my second degree. I did a Bachelor of Arts first, majoring in political science and psychology. And I got a lot of encouragement from a lot of psych lecturers. And I decided I liked it and I was good at it and continued on to the Bachelor of Psych. And here I am. 10 years on, and I'm still a psychologist.
Tell me a little bit more about your journey from then to now.
Yeah, so I think my journey is a bit different to a lot of people in the field. I didn't necessarily go into it thinking, yes, I definitely want to be a psychologist. I kind of realized that as I was studying. So for me, when I was studying and me and a number of other students restarted the JCU Psychology Society, I hope that still exists, in various different forms. And we were really passionate in ensuring that there was a lot of connection between JCU and the psychology community, whether that be via research, practitioners, or the various number of other jobs that are around. And that's why I'm really excited for this podcast, because I think it's really important to make sure that whether you're looking to be a psychologist or use all the very relevant skills that you have in undergrad as a psychologist, which are highly sought after in the marketplace, to make sure that it's relevant, but also know where to go. And I think sometimes that can be a bit tricky when people see studying psychology as only being a psychologist, and that's definitely not the case. So for me, when I graduated, I went into my provisional psychologist and started working in occupational rehabilitation. So that's helping people with physical and psychological injuries in the workplace. I did a lot of work with defense and veterans in the community space. And then I enrolled in the graduate diploma and decided that maybe that wasn't for me. Not to discourage people from doing it, definitely do it if you want to. But I found that for me, I really enjoyed working in the very practical aspect of the +2 and now the +1 program, and did occupational rehab for quite some time. I worked up the corporate ladder, did that for a bit, and in 2023 I left that job and started my own psychology clinic, going back to sort of my more clinical roots as a psychologist. So it's been a varied journey for me, but all the skills I learned throughout university have been very applicable in the various different roles I had. So in the previous role I had, where I was there for 8 years, I started out as provisional psychologist and a consultant and worked my way up through people and culture, which is so important in the psychology space. There's a lot of obviously behavioral science that goes into managing people and organizations and performance and leadership. And I was lucky enough to be selected as one of the few people in the organization I worked for to do executive leadership coaching.
Okay.
And I sort of went down that track for a while into senior leadership, and became the state manager for Queensland and on a number of big projects throughout our company, throughout Australia. Was lucky enough to win a couple of awards from it, and then decided I really wanted to go back to seeing clients and sort of the roots, and have really enjoyed that journey and the learnings that have come along with it.
So you mentioned you sort of worked your way up that ladder and were really working around people management and quite at, a state level. do you think is the best transferable skill that is really foundational that you get from your undergrad that allowed you to go up that ladder and be at that high level?
People are going to cringe at me saying this. Psychometrics is going to be one of your best friends because,
Really? Okay.
and it's not because I did a psychometric assessment or anything like that with the people who worked for me or I worked with. It was the clinical and analytical skills that came along with it. It was being able to take a step back, a big giant step back sometimes, and see all the challenges from a people perspective, from a behavioral perspective, whether that's certain client groups or employee groups, and being able to take a giant step back and understand and assess sort of those intrinsic motivators that humans have, as we all do, and be able to then apply that learning in coming up with behaviorally based solutions in order to improve performance, in order to improve levels of burnout that happens when you start to become a psychologist and enter the workforce after university, to support client groups. And defense is just one of the ones that we work with around improving their outcomes. And that was something that was particularly passionate of mine. A lot of the clinical and analytical skills that I had at university in Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Bachelor of Psychology and my thesis all helped me towards that end. And being able to take a big giant step back and put aside what some of your particular opinions may or may not be and really challenge them has helped me a lot.
Yeah. And I love that you just mentioned your thesis. And because I think sometimes we think of research sitting outside of what we think the future might hold. And you've just mentioned analytical skills and sort of applying those. Yeah. So I'd love to hear how you think about your use of those research skills, even though you're not, quote unquote, a researcher.
Yeah, so I mean, I never wanted to go into research, but it was something that I learned a lot from, and I was very lucky to have a professor that helped me a lot and recognize that there are certain things that I'm very good at, and there are certain things I'm really not, and kind of work with my strengths. So I really appreciated. And so having a look at all the skills that you have in research, collating information, is it qualitative or quantitative? Is it too subjective, or is there a bit of rigor around it? And being able to challenge some of those misconceptions or perceptions or bias, and being able to take a step back and put a bit of rigor around it, and being able to challenge some of your colleagues who might be higher in the organizational chart or even lower, I found was really helpful. And that made me get selected for a lot of project work, which had national implications for the organization I worked for, because I could do that. So I could do it on the micro level, but also the macro level. And I think psychology really instills that in you. And I think the JSU program instills that in you as well, because you're forced to look at the detail, which I personally naturally work towards, but also take a big step back and look at the macro, the bigger picture.
Yeah, and I mean, that's scientific thinking. Project management it's
your best friend forever.
Yeah, regardless of what area you're in, you're managing people and projects and relationships, right? So now that you've taken this step back to that clinical space, what does your day-to-day look like now?
So I've had this opened up this clinic in February 2024. So it's about 18 months in. And for me, I see about 6-ish clients a day, purely to make sure I'm giving enough energy and time for myself, but also my clients and the responsibilities I have as a clinician. Paperwork, because I'm in the clinic. So it's, there's always the paperwork and the legislative requirements to come along with that. I've just employed another psychologist who will start in 4 weeks, which I'm really excited about, and looking to hire another one at the end of the year, because it's tough in the mental health community at the moment. There are not enough psychologists and a lot of people who need support. So for me, it's a bit of networking. That's something I've always really loved doing with other psychologists in the space, and trying to probably garner some more of that collegiate response like we had at JCU Psych Society and JCU with the lecturers and professors and students, to then leverage that for the community as well, because wait lists can range from 4 weeks to 4 months. A lot of psychologists have closed their books. It's busy times, and it's a difficult time in the world with a lot of things going on. And that comes in, and I see those presentations every day, whether it's cost of living, worry about war, however many elections we've had in the last 6 months, to state and federal. So, all the stresses come along with it. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to see people from all walks of life, people who are trying to take the first step in addiction, to people who own businesses, And I'm really lucky to be able to see the breadth and depth of what people require at the moment.
Yeah. I know you just mentioned the breadth and depth of clientele, but is there a passion area for you, or something that like really a form of therapy or a type of presentation that really just captures you?
Well, that's a good question. I'm a bit eclectic in my approach. So I like to meet the client. I'm pretty direct, if you haven't picked up on that in the podcast so far, but I think a lot of people really respond to that. I really enjoy working with couples and relationship counseling. That's been a bit of an area that I've always enjoyed, but I didn't think that's the area I'd probably lean into a lot more. But I have really loved that. I do a bit of work with people who are under the work cover scheme, who've had a psychological and or physical injury in the workplace, kind of back to my roots when I first graduated, but from the clinical standpoint now. I do a lot of CBT, bit of schema, bit of acting. Like I just draw on lots of different modalities depending on what the client I think is going to respond to. In the couple space, I'm probably quite eclectic. I don't have a purist vision of Gottman therapy or family focused therapy. I kind of draw on lots of different things. Sometimes, in my opinion, when it's a purist approach, it might not fit for everyone. So I just kind of pick and choose what I think the clients will respond to, whatever that might look like.
Yeah. Thinking about the future, I know you mentioned, there is a high demand for assistance in mental health, and we want to be able to provide that. What do you see the future for these upcoming graduates to be? What can they sink their teeth in and assist with?
It depends what career path they want to go down. There was a really interesting study from the University of Canberra, and kind of drawing out the skills that people develop in undergrad, not necessarily postgrad, the skills that you should be coming out with as part of undergrad, and did a massive analysis of tens of thousands of jobs throughout the country with the type of skills that they're looking for. And I know personally, when I graduated, I still wasn't sold on maybe being a psychologist. I wanted to see what was out there. I did a lot of applications towards government jobs, and every criteria with a government job in a grad program relates exactly to psychology. And that's why psychology undergraduates are so in demand. There are so many things that you can do. People kind of usually use, HR or this or that or the other. The intelligence agencies here in Australia love psychologists, love psychology undergrads because of the way we think. It's very critical, it's very analytical. A lot of people in government programs, whether it's the banks, whether it's government agencies, state government, local government, they like psychology graduates because of what we can bring. And so it makes any graduate coming through the pipeline very employable. It's just learning how to sell those skills. And that's something I was particularly passionate about when I was part of the JSU Psych Society, is learn how to sell your skills because they're transferable to so many places.
Yeah, and transferable skills are so important and so widely applicable. And I'd love just to get your opinion on maybe just recapping the benefits that you found in doing those co-curricular activities. So being involved in the Psych Society and taking those opportunities connected, but not necessarily within your subjects, to help develop your career.
Yeah. People focus so heavily on getting good grades, and that's important. You've got to apply yourself, you've got to do well. I was a bit of a pressure makes diamonds kind of student. Look, I don't recommend that, but the outcome for me was I actually really liked the networking side of things and bringing groups of people together towards an end goal. And that's what the JSU Psych Society was to me. And I was the student member of the local APS chapter, although I'm now part of AAPI. So for me, and for a lot of students, I think that being able to network and know other people, that's actually what's going to get you most jobs. Except for the government sector, it has to be very fair and reasonable, but someone knowing who you are on the outside and the type of person you are is certainly going to help. And so that networking opportunity is, if there's one thing I can suggest, is don't let that go by the wayside. The students that you know now, you don't know where they're going to be in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. I actually caught up with a friend who went to JCU here, who I'd not spoken to since graduation, for coffee. She has her own clinic, I have mine. And we're like, hang on, why aren't we helping each other here? We've got resources that we could share for me to help her and for her to help me in our areas of relative strength. She has very different experiences to I do and I to her. And making sure that you maintain those connections is really important.
I agree that networking is so important. For some people, though, the idea of putting themselves out there and like thinking, how do I create a network? Maybe I'm shy, maybe I don't know where to start. What's your top tip?
Yeah.
Outcome?
If you can insert yourself into someone else's group, that's always super easy. Just asking someone for a coffee. It doesn't have to be, in the city. It can be here on campus, and just, hey, don't have class. Do you want to catch up for a coffee? And just get to know and ask people questions and understand them a little better. Because when you do that, as we all know, as psychologists and people who are interested in psychology who may be listening, that connection, that positive connection, can help you feel a bit more comfortable and confident about yourself, which might make you think, oh, hang on, maybe I don't want to go down the path that I thought I'm supposed to go down. Maybe there are different opportunities, but you don't know unless you talk to other people. And I don't know of any psychologists who have ever closed their door to a student wanting to talk about options and the field and opportunities. I think psychologists are really wonderful in that respect, and very open and transparent and willing to donate time and energy and resources and whatever and opportunities to make sure that as a collective, we raise each other up.
Certainly. Drew, I think that's a lovely point to end on. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our Psych community. If you'd like to show your support, or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.